morning.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Good.
Okay. I like that answer. It's a nice, good, short answer. And I, too, am doing very, very well. Today is Testosterone Tuesday. How about that?
Testosterone Tuesday. I hadn't heard of that calendar distinction, but it sure sounds good.
Well, when we have the best, I think that, we could probably get through this. However, I like this first question, and it's not so much to do with testosterone, but the rest are. So we're going to get to it right away. Because we said last time that we're just going to fly through this at like 78 RPM, right?
Fly. Let us fly.
Well, just so we can answer all these questions.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Okay, talk to you later. That was really good. Anyway, this is an interesting question to me, and I hope it is for you too, lovely lady. Does thyroid medication like Armour thyroid that is given, I took it back in the day, tank my free T? My total is pretty high, but the free is tanked. My estrogen also went lower. So how can I improve absorption? Now, second question is also...
Let's pause with that first question first. There's sub-questions in that first question, sub-question. You ready? Here we go. Let me start with that.
You got it.
Armour thyroid. I, quote, cut my teeth, end quote, on Armour thyroid. 30 years ago, I was at the privilege of mentoring with Alan Gaby on many things in functional medicine, and I shadowed him in his office. And he said to me, among many other things, listen, if you want to make a big difference for your patients immediately, if they're on thyroid, switch them over to Armour thyroid. They're going to be happier. And the thyroid that they were usually on was levothyroxine, a bioidentical T4, one of the two major thyroid hormones. There's two major thyroid hormones, T4 or levothyroxine, T3 liothyronine. So I dutifully shifted all my patients over to Armour thyroid. And indeed, many did say that they felt better. And some didn't like it as much as they liked the levothyroxine or Synthroid or Levoxyl, some of the brand names. And they switched back.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they switched back. One of the reasons that I believe, it's not just myself, I mean, I got this idea from other professionals, that people preferred Armour is that we all need both thyroid hormones, T4 plus T3. And how it works is the main hormone produced by the thyroid gland is T4, and that is circulated around to the cells. And inside the cells, the T4 is converted to T3, which is the really active thyroid hormone. That conversion is very important, and not everybody does it terrifically. A medical doctor in Orlando, Florida, my old stomping grounds, so to speak, Florida. I'm not there now.
Not many people know that, Dr. R. You just gave away your secret.
Dr. Wilson pointed out that not everybody did that conversion very well, and some people got functionally hypothyroid, didn't feel like they were getting enough thyroid hormone merely because they weren't doing that conversion. And at any rate, you need that T3. And pigs, our cousins, the pigs. Have you ever considered a pig your cousin, Carolyn Shapiro?
I have a brother who's one, but not a cousin.
Ooh, I hope he's not tuned in here.
Oh, no, I can promise you he's not.
It turns out that the pig's thyroids are easy to access and dry out and grind up. In fact, Armour thyroid is called desiccated thyroid, which is a pig's thyroid gland ground up and dried out. basically.
Ooh.
And the pigs have a higher concentration of T3 to T4 than we humans do. They're rich and abundant in T3. So theory is that why people prefer desiccated thyroid or brand name Armour, remember Armour bacon?
Oh, yeah.
That's the linkage there. They were helping the pigs transform into a different form from live to not live, and at which point they would extract many things, including their thyroid glands.
So if you ate that Armour thyroid bacon, did it help your T3?
Well, the bacon was not the part. That's not the thyroid part of the pig.
just trying to see if you could get anything good from a dead pig.
So that's why people preferred Armour thyroid very often, because they needed the extra T3. And then, I don't know, it must have been the 1990s or early 2000s, there was an upcoming mad cow disease. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I remember it.
And I had patients. I had one patient who had a relative who lived in Great Britain who was young and, quote, loved his meat rare and died of Jakob Creutzfeldt mad cow disease.
Oh, God.
It's very up close and personal when you're a physician and you hear a story from a patient. I want to tell you, it really matters. And I thought to myself, the cows are obviously not healthy, and that's how they're carrying this thing. And we all know about animal husbandry in the United States and other places in the world. It's awful. It's tragic, with the exception of possible, quote, organic or free range cattle and pigs and stuff.
And
but
kindness.
The majority of the food that's on the shelves in the United States comes from cows and pigs that are treated in concentration camps, really. It's awful. It's terrible. And they're not healthy, and they're fed antibiotics because they're not healthy. So they're prone to infections. So when I thought of that, I got concerned, and I called a pharmacist friend of mine, and I said, we know about mad cow disease. Is there a mad pig disease? And is this Armour, this desiccated thyroid, suspect? And he assured me that there wasn't known, but how much can he assure me? I mean, what are his sources? Are they any much greater? At least it wasn't being spoken about in the compounding pharmacy world that there was a mad pig disease. That was,
or a mad chicken disease.
That was the turn of the century. Still, there has been no emerged mad pig disease. But at any rate, if you ever open up a prescription Armour thyroid or desiccated thyroid, it's got other names, Westroid. If you ever open up a bottle that comes from the pharmacy and smell it, what does it smell like? Armour thyroid, a barnyard, obviously. So with a little bit of reluctance, I stopped prescribing Armour thyroid entirely. And I'm sure that some of our functional medicine, holistic, friendly folks out there are going to not like that because Armour thyroid is supposedly natural. Well, no, not for me anymore. So what I like to do is I like to prescribe levothyroxine, pure T4, and do a blood test because it's very apparent when a patient is converting their T4 to T3. And when they are not converting their T4 to T3, I add to their thyroid regimen a long-acting T3. There's a short-acting T3 called Cytomel. It has a very short half-life, so a patient who really needs T3, like I have one patient in Germany, she really needs T3. She's needed it since her early 20s. She's got to take it 4 times a day because the half-life, the amount that it lasts in your body is so short. So compounding pharmacists have known this for a long time, and they produce a long-acting T3. So it all comes down to this. Armour thyroid, Not for me. I don't like the odor. And what I much prefer is compounded T4, which is levothyroxine, and when needed, T3. And a workaround for those of you who have insurance is the T4, levothyroxine, comes in many dosage strengths. That's very handy, except all of these different dosage strengths have some kind of food dye in there. Yellow dye number 8, whatever it is, red dye number 16. There's one thyroid strength. It's 50 microgram. Levothyroxine, T4. It's white. It doesn't have any of those dyes in it. So the only T4 that I prescribe is either compounded, and I have the compounder make up the proper micrograms, or levothyroxine, 50 micrograms, that white tablet. And they're scored. You can break them in half, so you can easily make 75 micrograms, or you can take 2 of them for 100 micrograms, or you can compound it. So that's part one of that question. And then someone is asking us, how do you know if you need the added T3?
I was just going to ask that because go ahead.
I did just mention it. Is, for one thing, someone who needs thyroid hormone, and they take thyroid hormone, and they start low and they gradually increase the dosage. So we start at 50 micrograms. Then after a week, we go to 75 micrograms. You're tempted to go faster. Don't do it. Some people say 2 weeks. Then you go to 100 micrograms. You keep on increasing. And if you need thyroid, you're going to feel better. It's not subtle. Like, none of these hormones are subtle. And thyroid is not subtle. And if you take too much, you're going to get hypermetabolism. You're going to get hyperthyroid. You're going to get jittery. You're going to get nervous. Your pulse is going to go up. In fact, one of the ways you can monitor yourself is by taking your pulse. Don't want to see it above 84. Or you can hold your hand straight out. You should not see a tremor. Or if you really want to be technical about it, hold your hand straight out and balance an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And if there's a tremor, you're going to see it. And, people who have too much thyroid, they feel like they've had too much coffee. They feel jittery.
Yeah.
They feel nervous. They get heart palpitations. Their pulse rate's too high. Certainly above 84 is going to be too high. So I'm going to answer that question. How do you know if you need T3? Well, for one thing, if you start taking T4 and you gradually increase the dosage, you should feel better. If you're not feeling better, and or you get too high of a dose, so you get jittery, like you had too much coffee or something, go to your doctor. You need a doctor anyway to prescribe this stuff. And if you do the following blood tests, and this really matters, now hear this. In order to assess the thyroid, while you're taking your thyroid hormone, first thing in the morning, when you get up, prior to eating breakfast, you want it on an empty stomach. And to do a blood test, we want to get the blood test 24 hours after your last dose. So you go in fasting. That means water only from the midnight before. You haven't taken your thyroid that morning. You get that thyroid test in the morning, fasting. It's been 24 hours since your last dose. And the test that is so important for you to get is the following: TSH plus free T3 plus free T4 plus reverse T3. Those 4. And what'll happen if you're not converting your T4 to your T3, you'll see some decent free T4 numbers, maybe even a little elevated because you're not converting. And you'll see low free T3. And that's how you can tell technically if you're not converting. Thyroid, it's a big subject. In our training program for medical professionals, in our mentoring program, of the 12 hours, the thyroid section is the longest because there's a lot of technical goodness in there, and getting thyroid right is so important. We talk about menopause, but midlife, there's other hormone systems that aren't functioning up to 20-year-old standards. And you want to identify those functional hypothyroid situations and really get on that thyroid. It's such a great thing.
It is a great thing. And in looking back,
now your questioner had further questions. What was?
This is interesting, and I'm going to say good morning to everybody. Charlotte, Facebook user, Nitsa, hi, honey, and another Facebook user, and Shonda. The second question is also, how much E and T is too much if one is a perimenopausal, operative word, athletic woman? I feel like my operative word, hard workouts might be at play with my T wearing off faster. Am I paranoid? Or is this an actual thing?
Let's go back to that first question you answered, because there's a second part to that first question. I cut you off, and I thought it was important. I thought something was rising there on the horizon of that first question that is worth addressing. Is something about the thyroid lowered the estrogen? Would you please repeat?
How much E and T? And I'm
wanting to take you back to the
all
very
the way.
question you answered.
Does thyroid medication like Armour tank my free T? My total is pretty high, but my free is tanked. My estrogen also went lower. How can I improve absorption?
Okay, I'm not certain about that first thing there.
Okay.
The T4 was high, but the T3 was low, and she was taking Armour. I don't understand that. I've never seen that. When you test someone on Armour, you see an abundant amount of T3 because it's in the Armour. And again, I'm not recommending Armour anymore. So I want to back you up a little bit. And then this was the part that I wanted to address that is very important. I think the comment there is that her estradiol went down.
Correct.
Her estrogen went down.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. This is part of the technical issues of dealing with thyroid and estrogen simultaneously, and that can happen.
There are a couple of questions in here about that, yeah.
Yeah, what we train and mentor our physicians and nurse practitioners to pay attention to is that if they have a menopausal woman on the ovarian hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and DHEA, and you're going to start giving them thyroid, continue to monitor the levels there, because if you give them thyroid, you can affect their estrogen. Now, one way you can affect them, if you happen to overdose them on thyroid, you're going to be messing with the binding proteins. In fact,
guys,
remember that good old binding protein I've talked about on many of our Facebook Lives called sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG?
Know that one well.
The body uses that to carry many hormones around and distribute them to the various cells in the body. That's how you transport these fat soluble steroid hormones around in the body. And use sex hormone binding globulin among other serum proteins. But if you've got an excess of a certain steroid hormone, you can raise that sex hormone binding globulin, which is a natural protection mechanism of the body to protect against excessive levels of steroid hormones. One of the things that can raise sex hormone binding globulin is excessive thyroid hormone. So the moral of the story is this: you got to pay attention to all these variables. And here's the real moral of the story. It's the one job that is most important for a woman in menopause. It's to go shopping until you find a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a healthcare professional that you really like and really knows this stuff. They've been trained in this stuff. They've been trained in menopause. They've been trained in thyroid. If that's your job is go shopping and find one of these folks. They're going to have to write your prescriptions anyway, so there's no getting around not dealing with them. And you really want to find the right one. And sometimes it can take you a shopping trip. I mean, when I move to a new town, I usually go through 1, 2, 3, 4 mechanics before I find, I'm home free. This is the mechanic for my automobile that I want. The same with dentists.
I was just going to say, you read my mind. Same with dentists.
I sometimes go through 1, 2, 3, 4 dentists until I find my home office. This is the dentist I love, and I love his hygienist or her hygienist. This is my favorites. Well, this is ever so important for a woman in menopause, because I can tell you all the technical details and drag you down into the weeds of technicalities. You've already experienced that from me. And you shouldn't have to know this, and it wouldn't matter if you did, because you can't write the prescription. Now,
right.
I have a certain percentage of the women I've worked with for over 25 years in menopause. I know you're scientifically oriented, and it's big fun when you are. And I totally respect that, and you want to sit in the driver's seat, and all that's fantastic. And sometimes you're going to wind up with the best programs that ever were devised because you know so much. But I'm still going to say the whole purpose of this Facebook Live, the primary purpose is to help you find a prescribing physician, nurse practitioner, compounding pharmacist, physician's assistant that really knows their stuff. That's your biggest job. Because look what we're talking about in thyroid. We're down into the weeds of all this technical stuff.
Right, because we had a question come up saying, why are the doctors reluctant to order, reverse T3? We don't need to get into that right this second. We will. But, I mean, you do need to find that doctor who is going to hook up with you and like you, and you're going to trust that doctor. And together.
Well, why some doctors are reluctant is some doctors have such a deep and broad view of what's gone on in medicine.
Yeah.
That they're very cautious about ordering what they consider to be extraneous and excessive laboratory tests. And all the more power to them. I respect that enormously. They're paying attention.
Yes.
And yet, one of your protection mechanisms as a physician, that you're not prescribing an excessive amount of thyroid hormone, is you watch that reverse T3. And what reverse T3 is if the body has too much thyroid hormone floating around in there, well, it has a protective mechanism. It can mess with the biochemistry of T3. It can
Isn't it like SHBG?
No, it's not. This is very different.
Really?
Yeah.
And you've been binding it up like...
It's not a binding thing.
Oh.
It's a totally different mechanism.
Well, I didn't learn anything these last 2 years.
Yes, you have. You've learned a great deal, but this might be a new concept.
It is, totally.
Like, I'm not going to necessarily venture into the spatial configuration of molecules, because look out, folks, there's left-handed and there's right-handed molecules. Levothyroxine, left-handed thyroxine is what that is. Levo is left. This is spatial configuration of molecules. Well, your body can protect you from an excessive T3 amount, because you don't want excessive T3. It'll make you jittery, give you tremors, palpitations. You might even want to go to an emergency room. Your heart will be beating too heavy and fast. Well, your body can protect you. It can take the T3 that you're producing or you're swallowing and change the configuration of that T3 into reverse T3. And the reverse T3 is not active. That's a body protection mechanism of a different kind than elevating the sex hormone binding globulin. So, this stuff is big fun for me. I keep on trying to say, well, what's useful for you out there in Facebook land? And what's useful for you is to go shopping until you find someone who really knows all this stuff and can write your prescription and do the right testing at the right time.
Menopause land.
Menopause land, yes.
Right.
That's right next to where you live. You live near Disneyland, and then there's Menopause land right next door, is it? Or where is it?
Well, it's here where I live.
Oh, it's the planet Earth.
No, in my complex.
Oh, okay. You live in menopause land.
Or at least in my own head I do. I don't know. But I love it.
But that's why a physician might be reluctant to order reverse T3. And I can respect that.
So it's kind of like
theoretically, you could get all the testing information you want that you can get from serum from a TSH, a free T3, a free T4, and a sex hormone binding globulin.
So
theoretically, you could get all that information. You wouldn't need the reverse T3. And it's not cheap. And so I respect that physician who doesn't want to, as reluctant.
Oh, my doctor was writing. He said, Carolyn, do you know how much money you're going to be paying for this test? I was like, no. Found out. And I was like, maybe we'll just back off a little bit there. They're expensive. So we need insurance. I want to ask you this question. Like I'm chomping at the bit and I'm sorry.
Sure.
But like this blows my mind. Okay. So I'm skipping a question, but I'll get back to that other one because it's short. A woman can be perimenopausal many years, like many, many years. She can be perimenopausal. That blows my mind. And this is...
Let me interrupt you for a minute.
Go figure.
Theoretically, a woman is perimenopausal by the age of 22.
Yes.
Because her hormone levels, her ovarian hormone levels peak by the age of 20 plus or minus 2 years. So by the age of 22, her hormone levels are declining. So theoretically, she's perimenopausal. Now, that may not be consequential. The initial declines may not affect her health, her body, but she's on her way, age 22.
She's on her way to being a grandmother from back in the day at like 24.
Oh, God. Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, though. Please continue.
No, it's fine. So anyway, she says, this is strange to me, but so it is. So when a woman has not had a period in 12 months, that would mean that she's considered to be in menopause. However, well, would one treat, 3 questions here. Would one treat a perimenopausal woman with bias and also do a 24-hour UA workup in a woman who is perimenopausal? And then there's a part 2 to this question, but that part 1 I wanted to know if you could answer first.
Well, when you stop to think that a woman's hormones, we're talking ovarian, we're talking estrogens, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA, they start declining at the age of 22. And then the question is, when does that decline become biologically consequential? Well, it certainly is biologically consequential if a woman is starting to experience symptoms.
Yeah.
For example, is what we say in the book, and I'll put in a plug for the book that Carolyn posts on Ins and Outs of Menopause. You can download the PDF copy of it free. We describe a situation in which the progesterone and the estrogen are declining. However, the progesterone is declining at a more rapid rate than the estrogen, and the progesterone is no longer present in abundant enough levels to balance the estrogen. So even though you've got declining estrogen, you got faster declining and deeper declining progesterone. That exquisite progesterone estrogen balance is not there, and the symptoms of estrogen stimulation start appearing. So you get estrogen overstimulation because you're not balancing the estrogen with a sufficient amount of progesterone. So you get breast tenderness, you get PMS, very common in women in their 30s. You get mood stuff. You start getting anxiety that's not really you, or depression that's not really you. Now the stuff creeps up on you. These symptoms creep up on you. So sometimes you don't really notice them because they take a long time to develop, like from the age of 22 on.
Right. It's kind of like it's just another day, whatever, bad day. Nobody's thinking hormones right then.
But meanwhile, you're still having periods. Sometimes those periods are still very regular. That means there's enough estrogen to have the periods. You don't need progesterone to have the periods. If your
Right.
periods have gotten irregular, that means you're not ovulating. That means your progesterone levels are real low. Well, the very first thing that it makes common sense to replenish is the progesterone. And you can get over-the-counter progesterone. And although my favorite progesterone is in our organic oils base, progesterone in organic oils, you can get over-the-counter progesterone in creams. And earlier that you can start giving it to yourself, the better. So if you're a woman in your early 30s and you're experiencing some breast tenderness, some return of PMS that you hadn't had for a while, you have some mood issues, you've got some anxiety that's a little surprising because it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, try some over-the-counter progesterone.
Right, but would a 24-hour urine work in a perimenopausal woman?
Well, here's the challenge. 24-hour urines or serum hormone testing in a woman who's not being treated, it can work if, number one, you're very selective about when in a woman's cycle to take that sample.
Right.
And it's week 3. So let's say a woman is menstruating regularly in 28-day cycles. From the first day of menstruating of one cycle to the first day of menstruating to the next cycle, it's 28 days. You would choose day 20 and 21 to collect the urine, 24-hour urine.
Got it.
3/4 of the way through the cycle. If you read the book, you'll see why that is the imperative time to test. Hello, Kitty.
Hello, Dr. Rosensweet. Silly kid.
And so that's the proper time to test. And you'll pick up on, but how valuable is it? Here's the problem.
Right.
It's not very valuable. If a woman's having regular cycles, I mean regular, every 28 days like clockwork, and you choose day 20 to begin your collection of urine, you're going to get some great results. They're going to be very interesting.
Probably robust.
However, how valuable they're going to be. You're going to see estrogen and progesterone there, and you don't know if you have enough progesterone because if you have regular cycles, you're ovulating. So you're going to see some nice levels there. If you're menstruating and ovulating, it's going to be fun, but it's not going to be that useful. The women who tend to want to get tested in the perimenopause, they're still having menstrual periods, are the ones who have irregular periods and they're getting symptoms. But this is very problematic because these are the women who would, you'd think would benefit from testing. But as I describe in the book, when you start getting these declining hormone levels, you start getting this erratic output. So when you go to test on what day, 3/4, yeah, there she blows. There she blows
with all these pages marked. Go ahead.
I'm not going to go into the details, but testing in the perimenopause is treacherous. You get such erratic output, and we've described this in the book, that you don't know how to deal with the numbers that you get. And you might, someone who's having hot flashes in the perimenopause, she's 35 years old, she's waking up in the night and she feels warm all over, and she's got a racing heart. And yet she's at a time in life when she's still menstruating. Here's what you know. That woman most likely has low estrogen.
Chances are, huh?
Chances are very high.
Oh,
Low estrogen. But you could test on a day because of the erraticness. The peaks are higher and the troughs are lower. You could get a response that says she has too much estrogen. But meanwhile, she's having hot flashes. And what that means is over the course of the month, she's not having enough estrogen output, and she needs estrogen in the perimenopause. And this circles around to answer the question, do women need estrogen in the perimenopause? And there certainly comes a time when they do, most all of them. But if you go to test them, you could test them on one of their peak days where it says she has estrogen's too high. I've done this. This is how I know this. And so you don't want to go testing in the perimenopause is treacherous, and we train and mentor our physicians and nurse practitioners and compounding pharmacists and PAs. Don't test in the perimenopause. Pay a lot of attention to symptoms in the perimenopause. Test in menopause when you're treating a woman, absolutely, but not in the perimenopause.
Okay, so let me then segue into this question, because yeah, okay, so a woman has been in perimenopause for 12 months, no period, 13 months, no period. Now her doctor says you are in menopause. Next month, bam, major period for 6 days. What the heck? What do you do?
Well, it's an erratic time, and although that is unusual, to be sure, once you've gone 12 months, it's very unlikely that those ovaries are going to revive. And that's why her doctor said you're in menopause. 12 months, that's the official definition by the American College of Gynecologists. 12 months without a period, you're in menopause.
So you don't have to start all over?
Well, then you have a period. This is very unusual, but it can happen. And there's one of two causes. You went through a period of stress, or your ovaries hadn't conked out all the way. They will sooner or later. And so you had a erratic period, but stress can bring on some stimulatory hormones to the ovary that could revive it a little bit. It's not going to revive it for long. That's one of the possibilities. Another possibility is there's something unhealthy going on in that uterus. When you see a bleed in a woman who's been no period for 12 months and now she's bleeding. So one thing I would be careful to elicit from her history is this look like a real period? Is there just like a spotting or a bleeding? But that wouldn't stop me. If she had gone 12 months without a period and then she had some bleed, I would send her to a gynecologist for a test called the transvaginal ultrasound. Because although it's rare, and I don't want to scare anybody because the erratic thing is also possible, it could be endometrial cancer. And it's a great success to catch endometrial cancer early because it is 100% treatable. Yes, you have to remove the uterus. But that's an important thing. And I've seen 2 cases of endometrial cancer. And we caught them early, and that was very good for the woman.
Oh, indeed.
So when there's something beyond 12 months, I'd want an evaluation by a gynecologist. They do it in their office, transvaginal ultrasound, not hard to do, not painful.
No.
It'll take a look at that uterine lining after 12 months and make sure doesn't have an irregularity in it, such as endometrial cancer. You just don't want to blow those things off. You have to rise up and go to the doctor. Oh, what fun that is. Let me make an appointment and let me schedule an appointment with my gynecologist.
And drive in the traffic and really enjoy the whole deal.
Oh, I really want to take this time out of my week to do this. What a thrill. Oh my God.
I don't going to the dentist.
Yes, exactly. You know it's good for you, but oh God, really, it's such a mixed thing there. Blech. Well, I'm still going to say it because I'm a medical doctor and I'm not alone. And you tell me how many gynecologists have heard this story where there was an unusual bleed and it turned out to be endometrial cancer and they cured it. So,
little name dropping here. When I had lunch with Dr. Blooming, he was very good friends with my dad, but with my then ex-boyfriend's many years ago, father who was an OBGYN, and he did run into this often endometrial cancer. It's the first time I ever heard of it. It scared the heck out of me. I was like, ooh, I don't want that.
It's really curable when you catch it early. So when I see an abnormal bleed, and one that I wouldn't expect, I send them to a gynecologist. This is their bread and butter. They know how to deal with this very skillfully. They have a tremendous amount of information about it, and it's not mysterious to them. They know exactly what to do.
Cool. So for the ladies that do write to me, and many of you do privately, there's your answer. You know, you can get with a good OBGYN and talk with them and get that transvaginal ultrasound, or ask at least about it, or ask about your endometrium and see what's up, right?
Exactly.
Cool. All right. All right. So into our Testosterone Tuesday. I am very low in testosterone, I am told. How do I tackle this without becoming estrogen dominant? Some testosterone converts to estrogen, and this concerns me as I had breast cancer. So I feel I need to get this 100% right.
I can tell you, I love this question.
I can tell you I knew you would.
How'd you know?
I'm telepathic that way.
All right, yes, you are.
I'm lying, but I did like that question.
There's a couple parts to it, too.
Yes.
So I want to approach it in a general sense for all women before I zero in on the questioner.
Okay. She's a lovely questioner. All of our people are lovely.
We think of testosterone, and I think so many women know that it's what it really is. And what it really is it's not a male hormone. It is a human hormone. And women need their testosterone as much as males need our testosterone. We don't have the same amount. I mean, males put out a lot more testosterone. But I'll tell you, one of the most important pieces of working with a woman in menopause is the testosterone. And I'm going to tell you why. And I can also tell you this, that if you haven't had a period in 3 years, 100% of you are low in testosterone. Now, I'm testing women very commonly who are early in menopause. And we only do the 24-hour urine hormone test once we've got their programs going. And very often we'll start their programs on supplementing estrogen and progesterone and very eager to see what the testosterone is. And 80% of the women that we test who are in early menopause are majorly low in your testosterone. Now, our common way to start treating women is we start treating women in menopause with biased for an estrogen, with progesterone, and also with the testosterone DHEA combination. Because the history that we take on women in our questionnaire, it's going to reveal testosterone insufficiency because there's symptoms of testosterone insufficiency. So those of you who care to, who are watching, get into a squat on the floor right now and stand up. Those of you who are having trouble doing that, whereas 20 years ago you wouldn't have trouble, you're testosterone deficient. If you have cough incontinence, high likelihood that if you're losing your urine when you cough, high likelihood that low testosterone is part of it. If you're getting a little flab in this tricep area where you used to have some pretty firm triceps there, if your thighs are getting thinner, you have testosterone insufficiency. And I've said it many times that I think one of the greatest services we do in treating women in menopause is to treat them early and adequately with testosterone. Why is that so? Well, I've told this story before. I'm a senior medical student. I'm working in the hospital at the University of Michigan. I have my white coat and I have my short coat because I was a medical student.
Right.
And we're listening to a noon lecture, and this time by a gerontologist. They specialize in the elderly. And I can hear this gerontologist's words ring to this very day. This was like 50 years ago. You medical students, you know thousands of diagnoses. That's amazing. And let me tell you what's really happening with older people. They're losing their muscle. That's called sarcopenia, loss of muscle. And they get to a point where they cannot stand or walk with stability. And they start getting into canes, then walkers, then wheelchairs, if they make it that far, because very often they'll fall on a hip and fracture a hip. And in those days, 1968, that was lethal. Most of those women died. And even these, though surgery is just amazing, most of the women who get hip replacements when they're very elderly, they die within a year. And so sarcopenia, folks. And then if you go through your supermarket, if you don't know about this already, or you go through a pharmacy, there's a lot of shelf space taken up by a product called Depends. It's an adult diaper. Why?
Small, medium, large.
One of the reasons why women lose the ability to control their urine is this major muscle that holds up your bladder and your uterus and contents of your pelvis. You get sarcopenia of that. It's called the left urani. Close your eyes and squeeze your anus, and you'll be squeezing the levator ani. And you lose that muscle, and that's how you get incontinent. So one of the most important services we do for women, which keeps them out of nursing homes and assisted living facilities, is we replenish testosterone. Now, you've probably heard testosterone relates to your libido, and those of you who had very robust libido, now you don't. There's many components to libido, that's for sure, but low testosterone could be one of them. But here's the moral of the story. You all need testosterone. And we are 95% of the women who come to us have hormones with testosterone and DHEA, along with biest and progesterone. You need testosterone.
Little plug for testosterone. It was hard for me to handle. A little plug for testosterone. It was hard for me to handle at the very beginning just because my dose was too high. But since taking it, my agility, my clarity, my running up the steps, my flabby arms. No, I'm kidding. It has been extremely helpful. And I've run into doctors that look at me like I have 3 heads. Like, what do you mean you're taking testosterone? You know? So thank you for giving us permission to understand what testosterone is all about. Are you there? You're kind of there. I can't hear you. Uh-oh. Okay, so we're having some technical difficulties. I'm hoping Dr. R can hear this because I want to ask this question. I see a smile. So if you can answer me, testosterone converts to estrogen, and this concerns me as I've had breast cancer. And then there's another question on top about doing really, really, really rough exercise and how that might really.
Absolutely certain, no question. Now,
I keep losing you.
I want to go
Bummer.
further with this woman's question. Can you hear me?
I kind of can, and you go in and out.
want to go further to answer this woman's question.
Okay.
Looks like we're having some internet challenges here.
I'm hearing you though.
Oh, uh-oh.
Bummer.
I'm still here, and I did want to.
Well, if you can hear me, you're kind of frozen, and you're I'm hearing me. Your voice is going in and out. Can you talk? Yeah, I can't hear you. This is a menopause method blooper. I can. But now I can't.
Can you now, Carolyn? Do you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Can you talk?
Well, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, let me try and answer the question that I did hear. I definitely heard the question. So
okay, thank you.
You're concerned about breast cancer and hormones. So I want you to read the book called Estrogen Matters, because the fear that was instilled in women and in healthcare professionals for taking hormones was incorrect. Now, hormones are powerful and we want to get the dosages right, but that's easy to do. When you're treating a woman in menopause with bioidentical hormones, bioidentical, not Premin or Prempro, bioidentical, 24-hour urine hormone test will all the time tell you if there's too much testosterone, too much estrogen, too little. We know what those numbers are. The thing that you're concerned about, testosterone converting to estrogen, you're concerned more about a biochemical pathway and a theory there. I never am concerned about that, just so you know. And I don't have to be concerned about it because we test 100% of the women that are in menopause taking hormones. We test them at the right time, and it tells me, do you have too much or too little testosterone? Do you have too much or too little of the testosterone metabolites? Very important in understanding if you have too much testosterone, if you have too much of the metabolites, that's the metabolites are what testosterone becomes in the process of being utilized. Do you have too much estrogen? Do you have too much or too little progesterone? We know those numbers, and we're testing 100% of our women so we don't get shocked or surprised by too much. So I'd let go of the theory. I would take great solace in you're not at increased risk for recurrence of the breast cancer from taking hormones. Now, pause. We're all at risk for thousands of diagnoses. We're all at risk for cancer. I'm a man. I'm at increased risk for prostate cancer over other cancers. Women are at increased risk for breast cancer and endometrial cancer. And there are reasons for this rise in this risk. But having said that, women who are treated with hormones, talking estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, women who are treated with hormones, they're at less risk you're at less risk for developing cancer in the first place than women who do not receive hormones. And
okay, so can you repeat that one more time?
I'm going to go a little further.
Okay.
Women who have had breast cancer and have had that breast cancer properly treated, yes, you're at increased risk of recurrence than a woman who's never had cancer is for getting cancer, but you're at less risk for recurrence if you're treated with hormones than if you are not treated with hormones. And then bottom line, do hormones cause cancer? I'm going to give you an answer, no. That's the answer I'm going to give you. There are many causes of cancer, and they're rough, and they need to be addressed in all of us, hopefully in a preventive way.
Yeah.
As far as being in menopause, having had breast cancer, you're at less risk. And when we treat you, and we treat many women who have had breast cancer, we're going to be very careful.
One in particular.
We're going to, I know who you're referring to.
I know you do. Amazing woman.
We're going to be monitoring by 24-hour urine hormone testing whether you have too much or too little estrogens, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA. And we're not going to give you too much testosterone. So the bottom line is we get to know with precision, is your testosterone being converted to estradiol? The only way we don't ever be able to know that is if the only hormone you were taking were testosterone. Then we get to see how much of it converted to estradiol. When we're giving you biased, as we would, that's a combination of estradiol and estradiol, plus progesterone, as we would, plus testosterone, plus DHEA, as we would. We're going to test you at a certain point, and we're going to see that you're in optimal ranges, not too much and not too little. That's the gift, the great gift of the 24-hour urine hormone test. Not other hormone tests, not other hormone tests. I'm highly opinionated about this one.
And we will respect your opinion on that. I think that you've earned your seat.
You know, but I'm so at any rate, read Estrogen Matters and embrace these hormones.
Well, and read Happy Healthy Hormones too. I mean, the two of them together are like, you know, I mean, really amazing. You want to learn about?
Behold,
no, it's not that time yet. We have 45 seconds left. So
no, it's time to say hasta la vista until Thursday morning when we get to do this all over again.
What is it? MICKEY MOUSE. Now it's time to say goodbye to all my family. So we will say goodbye. I'm sorry I didn't get to your question, but I will next time. Dr. R will send me a screenshot. Dr. R, it was wonderful to see you today as always. All of the women, and I think there's some men up here that have come up. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And we love doing this. So I'm just happy. I hope everybody has a really great day. Enjoy. Bye. Peace out.